3, and appointing Mr. Savageau to be the chair for the evening.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the April 4th Board of Selectmen meeting. May we have the roll, please?
All 5 selectmen are present, as well as the town administrator, Michael Hartman.
I'm going to go out of order and just quickly mention that the polls are open for the local election until 8 o'clock this evening, so if you haven't voted, you have 55 minutes to do so, and I hope that you do so. It's your constitutional right and your privilege. Just for the benefit of those at home, I'll just quickly go through the agenda, if I may. We'll have a 7:05 hearing for the classification of fiscal year 06 residential factor. We'll follow with citizens' participation, and we'll follow with the consent agenda, the town administrator's report. We have one hearing at 7:15 under licenses and permits for a transfer of retail license. We'll handle announcements thereafter. There are 2 more. Under business, we'll vote town meeting warrant articles if there are any available to be voted this evening. Discussion on petition article 29. Any other business, selectmen reports will adjourn, and there are no executive sessions. Is that right? Good. Okay, so I guess we need a motion to open this hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. Okay, classification for 06 residential factor. Ms. Hartman, and I'm sorry, are you going to, he's going to address the report. Do we need to hold a public hearing, or can we just go with this report and then vote on it?
I think you just go with the report and vote on the report. Yeah, and it's not like a zoning board hearing or anything.
So we don't, okay, all right, thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. If you could just introduce yourself for the record and speak directly into the mic. Good evening.
I'm representing the chairman tonight. He couldn't make it, so I thought I'd come along with the director of assessment, and I'll let him take over and give you all the details that's involved in the classification hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Keefe.
My name is Paul Keefe. I'm the Director of Assessment. And this is Jim Mackley's.
He's shy.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As you're aware, every year there's a requirement that you hold a classification hearing, basically to determine whether or not the tax rates for the town will be a single rate that applies to all classes of property, or whether there'll be a split rate with one rate applied to residential parcels and a different rate applied to commercial, industrial, and personal property. So I've prepared a brief outline of what we're going to do here. The technical term that the Classification Act uses is that you're adopting a residential factor. The residential factor of 1, should you adopt it, would mean that all classes have the same tax rate. If you adopt a residential factor that's less than 1, then you will have split rates that apply, as I said, to different classes. Now, I ask you to look on the 3rd page. Unfortunately, I didn't number them. The 3rd page in this handout. And on this page is a standard state form, which they use to calculate what is called the minimum residential factor. This would be if you choose one that's less than 1. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of that page, you'll see that the minimum residential factor for the town of Wareham this year will be 93.8894. What that number means is that the maximum shift you can make downward for the residential classes is to 93.8894% of the levy share that they would pay if there were a single rate. Conversely, if you elect to make, that's the maximum shift you could make, that would then shift a portion of the residential levy onto the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes. So that's really the heart and soul of what you're being asked to do tonight, because even though there are 3 things we're going to discuss, starting with the residential factor, in any case, if you vote for a tax factor of 1, a single tax rate. The other two really, the residential exemption and the small business exemption, really wither away because they also would result in split rates. So I would note that in the middle of the page, I noted that for every 10% increase in the CIP tax rate over a single rate, there will be only a 1.23% decrease in the residential tax rate. And you're allowed to shift a maximum onto the commercial industrial classes of 50% of their tax levy under a factor of 1. What happens when you do that is shown on the last 2 pages of this handout, which I have for other people. I'm sorry I didn't get them to you earlier. If you look at this rather busy handout, what it does is show the impact of the shifts as you increase the CIP share of the levy and decrease the residential share. If you look at the second page, the bottom line is this. In order to increase the CIP classes by 50%, the reduction in the residential class is minimal. It's only 6.43%, and that shows in the fourth column from the left. So, and that's what I mean by the 1.23% versus 10%. For every 10% you increase the tax bills on the commercial side, you only decrease the tax bill 1.23% on the residential side. So it's quite disproportionate. And the reason for that is quite simple. What's been happening, and I alluded to this last year, we'll see it again. If we go back to the third page of the handout, line 1, residential, percentage share, that would be percentage share of the levy, will be 89.1098. That's up from last year's 88.1317, about a 1 percentage point change. The prior year, there was a 2 percentage point change from fiscal 04 to fiscal 05. So that's a continuing trend that we see here and in most of the communities in the eastern half of the state where the residential values have been going up, both in terms of new construction and market effects. And the commercial industrial have been more or less stagnant. So there's been an increase in the residential portion of the levy in most communities. And that is reflected right here. You're on the verge of being 90% residential, where just a few years ago it was well down into the low to mid 80s. So that's a continuing trend. And that's why a very large shift in the commercial side of the equation results in only a very small shift in the residential side, because right now your percentage on the residential side is so high, and therefore the impact of those shifts is minimal. So if you look on the second page, history, about 2/3 of the way down, to my knowledge, you've always had a single tax rate. There may be some years in the distant past that I don't know about. And I will ask Mr. Macris to reinforce this, but the assessors continue to support a single tax rate. Is that the Board of Assessors?
That's been the recommendation and the feeling of the board for the last several years, to maintain a tax rate of 100%.
So at this point, let me halt for a moment on the tax factor of 1, your choice between the single tax rate and the split tax rate, and ask if you want to make a motion to vote it at this point, or do we want to go and discuss the residential exemption and the small business exemption first, whatever you would feel more comfortable with.
Why don't we hear it all, and then we'll...
Okay. The residential exemption, which is a bit of a misnomer, is there are only about 13 communities. I think I put 11 in there. I think there have been 2 since I wrote this that I've discovered. About 13 communities in the Commonwealth have adopted the residential exemption. This is voted on, if one would choose to do it, after deciding whether you have a single tax rate or a split tax rate. And it affects only the residential class of property. There's no longer any shift from class to class. What the shift that takes place with the residential exemption